Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Welcome to episode 154 of Movie Oubliette, the international dateline crossing podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, ringing in a new government in Cambridge, UK.
Yes, and me, Dan, learning to fix taps and roofs here in Melbourne, Australia.
Wow. We focus on forgotten fantasy, sci-fi and horror films because we love apartments that are larger on the inside than the outside, Doctor Who versus Obi-Wan Kenobi fantasy battles, and housemates who are handy with a hacksaw.
Ooh, yeah. Gotta love that DIY.
Yes, which you're heavily involved in, Dan.
Yeah, you know, we're first-time homeowners, so yeah, trying to cut costs, not have to pay all those tradies to come and fix my home. So yeah, learning about taps.
Taps.
I tightened a nut on our kitchen tap because it was kind of wobbling around, so I had to buy a box spanner. Didn't even know they existed.
No, I still don't.
And you are welcoming a new government. Is this like a game changer for the UK?
Yeah, it's a pretty big swing. So we've gone from having a Conservative government for 14 years, I think, through Brexit and all kinds of other turmoil and the pandemic and Boris Johnson and a prime minister that lasted less time than a lettuce, famously, online.
Right.
So now we have a new one, and we've sort of swung violently to the left. So now we have a Labour government, which is a left-leaning government, with the largest majority since Tony Blair in the late 90s.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's all the more appropriate that reformed with Professor Brian Cox at Glastonbury to do a rendition of Things Can Only Get Better, which was Labour's campaigning song back in the day.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed things turn out better than what it was.
We shall see.
Yeah, so I guess we should move on to the mailbag. What have our listeners been saying to us?
Well, we have a new patron for this episode, Al. Hello, Al.
Hey, Al.
Nice to have you aboard.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for supporting the show. And we had a lovely letter from Braden on the Black Hole. It was quite a long letter, but I've picked out a couple of paragraphs I really liked. He said, "Shame on you, Conrad, for saying this film was forgotten in terms of physical media. You must not forget it was released on VHS several times, one of which included a collector's tin with lobby cards. My mother can be blamed for my obsession for this film. She saw it on the shelf at our local video store and thought, space, Disney, I think we have a winner." And she was right.
Yeah, wow, okay. Big fan then.
Yeah, big fan. And yes, I did forget that it was on VHS several times. I didn't have it. And I think it was on Laserdisc too. It was just DVD where it seemed to take a while and then eventually stuttered out on Anchor Bay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. He also said, "I'm sure you've also read the film's novelization by Alan Dean Foster. If not, once again, shame on you. Foster is a true master, and kudos to him for taking this admittedly absurd premise and treating it legitimately." And yes, I have read it. I was a huge fan of Alan Dean Foster's science fiction movie novelizations as a teenager.
Right.
So he did things like Outland, Krull, The Thing, The Last Starfighter, Starman, all of the Alien movies. And we're still doing it recently. He did one for Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Wow.
So,
yeah. I do find it a strange form of media, novelizing a film.
Yeah.
And often the film had a novel to start with as well. So
yeah,
so
I know that makes it really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, the novelization of Jurassic Park based on Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park novel.
Yeah.
Why?
But wouldn't it be a translation of the movie, right? It wouldn't be from the original novel. It would be
No, it
because
wouldn't. It'll be from the screenplay.
yeah, so the movie's always different from the novel.
It is, and the novel sometimes reveals one of the reasons I loved reading them is they often reveal bits in the screenplay that were shot or maybe not shot and just excluded from the film. But it's a lot of deleted scenes are in the novelization because they get the script before they've finished post-production. So that was how I found out what all the special
Interesting.
edition scenes were in Aliens, because they're all in the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back then, bonus material in text form.
In text form. That was the way you got it. Yeah, back in
Wow.
the old days.
Interesting.
Yeah. There are a few of them in the Black Hole novelization as well. There are scenes that were cut. So, yeah.
Wow.
Well worth the read. But thank you, Braden, for getting in touch. It was lovely to hear from you. We also heard from John Michael Rouse, who said, "Thank you, Conrad and Dan. The quality of this pod found me securing a Friday night screening of The Black Hole. This was never on my radar prior, but I enjoyed a rewarding evening watching this late 70s sci-fi trip. Vincent is a new hero. I sincerely loved both the ideas that were developed on screen and the soundtrack. The depth of the laser sounds. Oh my."
Yes. That's great. I'm really happy that we're putting our listeners onto movies they had never heard of or never watched before.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of our missions. If we find a gem or something we think is worth visiting to, help people find them. That's great.
Yes.
And on Eric the Viking, Wicked Person said, "I watched this film prior to the podcast episode and was doing my best with it, but it completely irrevocably lost me with the foam rubber dragon with the bad wiring in the water tank scene. I've never been a fan of interminable scenes whose script presumably read, quote, 'All on-screen characters gesticulate wildly, scream and shout unintelligibly over top of each other for 15 minutes straight.'"
Right. So someone else in you and Michael's camp then.
Yeah, obviously not a fan. Although I think we both liked that scene with the monster and thought the monster was, a nice big chunky piece of practical effects work. But,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. It was lost on Wicked Person, unfortunately. And finally, we heard from Serge of Old Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And he said, "I liked Eric the Viking more than I thought I would. The opening scene made me think I was going to hate it, but as it unfolded, I got more and more invested in the quest and Eric's desire to undo the trauma that haunts him or deal with the disappointment that awaits. I thought some of the jokes were as good as anything in Monty Python. For example, an invisibility cloak that only works on one person, and I really vibe with the whole idea of meeting the gods and having them go, 'Piss off.'"
That's really surprising. I'm
Yeah.
always quite, taken aback by Serge's responses to films because it's often not what you expect.
Yeah, and sometimes completely the opposite to us. Although I think he's more in your camp, actually, because I think he enjoyed the quest as much as you did.
Yeah, which I'm really surprised by. Really surprised. I thought he would have hated the dialogue, but interesting.
Yeah, apparently not. But yes, it was lovely to hear from him, and all of our other correspondents, please do keep getting in touch.
Yes, please do. Okay, this episode, Conrad, what are we going to be discussing?
Oh, let me just head on over to the Oubliette and find out. Oh, the hatch is in the ceiling this time?
Oh,
I'll just climb up this ladder.
yeah.
Oh, I'm in a loft, I think.
Oh, okay.
And there's shafts of light everywhere.
Yeah, what are all those holes for?
I've no idea. I'm just stepping from rafter to rafter. I don't want to fall through.
Yeah.
It's not great.
What's that in the corner?
It's a water tank. I'll just lift this up. There's something in here wrapped in plastic.
Okay, must be in that.
Okay, I've got it.
I'm not frightened. I'm a little terrified.
Oh, wow. That was strange. It's never been in the ceiling before.
No, But it's quite a spacious flat, though.
Yeah, very nice.
So what do you have today?
So inside the plastic, carefully sealed, is a DVD of Shallow Grave, the 1994 British black comedy crime horror film directed by none other than Danny Boyle, based on a screenplay by John Hodge and starring Kerry Fox, Christopher Eccleston and Ewan McGregor.
Ooh, is this the first Ewan McGregor movie we've ever covered?
I think it might be, yeah.
Yeah. We have covered Danny Boyle before with Sunshine, but yeah.
Yeah. Which is odd because he had a lot of sort of recurring actors, like a troupe that followed him from one film to the next.
Yeah.
But,
No, Ewan McGregor
yeah.
wasn't in Sunshine.
he was not, no. He feels like he should have been, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
And Kerry Fox, of course, is a New Zealand actress.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I looked up all the cast. And yeah, she's from An Angel at My Table, which is a Jane Campion Kiwi film, and a bunch of like other Australian, New Zealand films as well. So that was surprising.
Yeah, born in Lower Hutt, Wellington.
That's where my wife is from. But yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Did she go to school with Kerry Fox?
No, I don't think so. I think Kerry Fox is a little bit older than my wife.
Oh, yes, she's 57.
Yes.
But yeah.
So what happens in Shallow Grave?
Well, in the hedonistic days of John Major's Britain in 1994, three 20-something single professionals are searching for a fourth to share their cavernous flat in central Edinburgh. Juliet, the aloof doctor, Alex, the arrogant journalist, and David, the shy chartered accountant. They settle on the suave and mysterious Hugo, who moves in but is promptly discovered dead and very, very naked.
Ew.
In his room, the flatmates discover a stash of drug paraphernalia and a suitcase containing £1 million. The trio face a classic movie thriller quandary. Do you call the police or hide the body and keep the cash? Well, it wouldn't be a film if they did the responsible thing, so one teeth-hammering, hacksawing excursion to the woods later, a growing paranoia and distrust threatens to tear the friends apart while Hugo's criminal associates close in. Ooh. Will David stop crawling around his spy hole-filled attic like an agoraphobic Spider-Man? Will they get to enjoy the money that they have stolen? Why do they need it if they can afford a flat that big? Find out after the break.
Yes.
And we're back to talk about Danny Boyle's film debut, 1994's Shallow Grave. Dan, had you seen this movie?
I had seen it fairly recently, so in the last maybe 2 years or so.
Oh, wow.
But it has been on my radar for a long time because I do love Danny Boyle. A lot of his movies in the 90s were quite popular movies to watch. You know, A Life Less Ordinary, Trainspotting, of course, The Beach, and then like later on in the 2000s, 28 Days Later, Sunshine, 2007, and winning the Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire, 2008.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I loved his films, but I just never got around to watching Shallow Grave until, kind of fairly recently, and then again for the podcast. Had you watched this in the 90s?
Yeah, so this was a huge hit in the UK when it was released in January 1995. So although it's a 94 movie, it was released in January 95.
Ah, okay.
Debuted at Cannes in 94. February in the US. In the US, it placed 16th in the box office and earned $2 million on a budget of £1 million, which is about $1.5 million back then. But it quickly vanished. And I think that's why I think we can cover it on the pod, because although I'm very familiar with it, I saw it in the cinema when I was... first year at university, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that dates me a bit. So for me, I thought, we can't do this on Movie Oubliette. Shallow Grave is huge. But of course, it was completely eclipsed by the cultural phenomenon that was Trainspotting and then the 8 Oscar-winning success of Slumdog Millionaire. And I was shocked to find that when I speak to friends in other countries like yourself, people haven't heard of it.
No, I only know of it because of Danny Boyle. I'd never come across it previously. I'd never been on TV in New Zealand or Australia.
Wow.
Had never seen it at video stores or anything. So yeah, it did not make it out of the UK or didn't become popular.
It's really peculiar because, as I say, in the UK, it entered at number 2 behind Stargate and was in the top 10 for 8 weeks and yielded £5.2 million or $8 million in 1995 money. Yeah, so it's huge.
Yeah, it's also interesting that Kerry Fox is a Kiwi and it for some reason didn't make it big in New Zealand because anything that has a New Zealander, normally New Zealand's like, oh my God, someone's in a movie that's from New Zealand. Let's make a big thing about it.
Yeah, and Channel 4, who funded this movie, I think some money came from like the Scottish Film Fund, trying to encourage local filmmaking. And the rest of the budget came from Channel 4. Their money was tied to Kerry Fox being in it.
Right.
Because she'd been in this Jane Campion movie, and at least if it's a mainstream failure, we can sell it as an art house film with Kerry Fox as the sort of linchpin for the whole thing.
Okay.
Which is weird to look back on because Ewan McGregor and Christopher Eccleston are such huge stars. Particularly in science fiction, of course, being Doctor Who and Obi-Wan. Whereas Kerry Fox, I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen anything that she's been in since.
Yeah, I've only seen the New Zealand and Australian movies. So The Sound of One Hand Clapping, Mr. Pip, which is kind of a co-production with New Zealand and Australia and Papua New Guinea, and The Dressmaker, which is an Australian film.
Right.
But yeah, I think she's most famous from An Angel at My Table because early Jane Campion film, it is an indie film and it's very bleak.
Right.
Like I remember it being like, this is depression in film form. Yeah, it's one of those movies that every film student in New Zealand probably studied at one point.
Yeah.
It is a good film. But yeah, I didn't know she was a Kiwi watching this movie.
I did. There are a couple of line reads where I thought, whoops, you slipped there.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, it's supposed to be set in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But the only Scottish person is Alex, played by Ewan McGregor. Is that right? Or is David supposed to be Scottish as well?
I think David is supposed to be Scottish, but it's a very mild accent that Christopher Eccleston is putting on. And I think people have mistakenly said that Christopher Eccleston is Scottish and that Danny Boyle is Scottish, and they're not. I think they're Northern English.
Yeah, right.
But, close enough, I suppose. But Ewan is the only legit Scot in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that came to mind watching this movie was this feels like a warm-up to Trainspotting. Like it feels like almost Trainspotting. Like he almost made Trainspotting, but this was like his test run.
Yeah.
So there's so many elements of this movie that feel like this is Trainspotting. So, I mean, having Ewan McGregor as one of the leads, but just certain scenes like the baby scene seems like eerily similar. There's this mechanical baby doll that walks around in this kind of drunken stupor scene with some of the characters. And also the prominence of like rave music as well. The start of this movie feels like the start of Trainspotting with the sort of fast forwarded footage through the streets with like left field playing, like just kind of this dance music playing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have drug taking though.
Apart from Hugo who dies, but it's not really central to the plot at all. No. It does feel like a gear shift in British cinema though, and I think that's probably what led to Trainspotting. So it was away from the Merchant Ivory costume drama heritage storytelling, Chariots of Fire, sort of historical backward looking, the tourist's view of what Britain is, to a modern,
edgy,
much more now.
Yeah.
This is Edinburgh of 1994.
Yeah.
Gritty social realism, but in the generic frame of a psychological thriller.
Yeah. But also really embracing the crassness of Britain.
Yeah.
Like not making it look like a polished Hollywood movie, like really just going, this is shit and we're proud of it. So it does remind me of like Guy Ritchie films of like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch and other movies like 24 Hour, Party People, Acid House, which is kind of an anthology movie, and all those kind of really, drug fueled or rave dance fueled. Human Traffic is another movie I thought of as well.
Oh, right, yeah.
Always teenagers or 20-year-olds just having a good time and living their life, and everything's shit, but it's fine. We love partying. And it's that sort of era of movies that came out. And I was in the early 2000s, I was in my 20s, and those were just like perfect for my sort of generation. We loved that stuff.
Yeah, it really resonated with an audience of my age when I was seeing it for the first time. It felt very much more like, okay, this is a Britain that I can recognize.
Yeah.
This one is more influenced, I think, by the modern noir, neo-noir stylings of, say, like the Coen brothers. I think
was
Blood
thinking that.
Simple
Yeah.
is definitely an influence on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it does fall into that thrillers with moral dilemmas kind of genre of filmmaking that was quite prominent in the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Danny Boyle's first feature film, well, theatrical feature film.
Yes.
And it does feel like we're straight out of film school kind of thing. Like it almost felt textbook 101 filmmaking. This is how you shoot a scene, and you got to have cross-cutting, and you've got to have this. And it felt a little, not generic, but a little bit, I guess not even formulaic. But it did remind me of that movie Intruders that we did, directed by Scott Spiegel. Like, we've got interesting camera angles, you know. We've got the ATM view camera angle where we're inside the ATM looking out.
Yes.
We've got the in the bathtub camera angle where the blood is stained red. So you've got this really artistic shot of a guy getting his head dunked into this red liquid with the camera inside the liquid. It's, I don't know. It feels like he's doing all the right things, but also trying new things or new interesting techniques.
Yeah, I love there's a making of on the Blu-ray that I have, and the making of is really good because it actually is sort of a camera wandering around showing what it's like to try to make an independent film in Britain with £1 million.
Yeah.
And clearly they're all under a lot of stress the whole time.
Yeah.
And there's a great quote from the producer, Andrew MacDonald, who went on to work on Trainspotting and numerous other films with Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. And he's very young in the making of, but he's on the phone and he's saying, it's not an art movie, even though some of it looks suspiciously like one.
Yeah.
That's just an offhand comment that he makes. He's sort of trying to convince some investor or a distributor, you know, don't worry, some of these shots are a bit arty, but it is just a gripping thriller. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's going to be accessible to a mainstream audience. And there are some really great shots in it. I think particularly using the color red. I mean, you've got the death of Hugo, who's splayed across this satin red bed in a dark space, and it looks like a Caravaggio painting.
Does.
The scenes in the woodland where David is charged with chopping up the body, hacking it up, and it's, I don't know how, but it's lit with red for some reason, and it's almost like a Sam Raimi comic book scene.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the scenes from inside the sink with the red. Red is used very effectively throughout, I thought. And there are also some really nice cuts as well, like that baby you talked about that was very reminiscent of Trainspotting. But there's a lovely shot where the baby is crawling across the surface and falls off, and you cut to the car being dropped into a lake or some sort of abandoned quarry with water in it. So it's sort of this match cut between these two very different actions. So there are lots of sort of stylistic flourishes in there that keep it very visually interesting.
Yes, I agree. Going back to the indie rough filmmaking and editing, like it felt very frantic at times to the point where like the dialogue is lightning fast and very witty.
Yes.
And a lot of cuts between, especially when at the start when they're interviewing all these prospective flatmates, and it's just like super quick dialogue, quite unhinged at times as well, because they're asking just crazy questions to these potential flatmates.
Yeah.
Like some of them, David asks Hugo, he's got like one last question, and it's like, have you ever killed a man? Like, who are these people? Alex asks one of the other flatmates, or potential flatmates, he says, when you sacrifice a goat and you rip the heart out with your bare hands, do you then summon hellfire? It's like, what?
Yeah.
But it is that really dry, sarcastic British humour that I really loved.
It is, but it also highlights something that I think would be well worth talking about, which is our three central characters and crucially their likability.
Yeah.
Because this is not a morality tale where you get to see three lovely but perhaps slightly flawed people broken apart by a bad decision that they make. You know, they make a Faustian bargain and it goes horribly wrong for them.
Yeah.
It's not that. You're introduced to three people who, frankly, I find utterly repellent. In fact, one of the working titles for the film was Cruel. They, in that opening scene when they're interviewing Cameron, who is this shy, sweet little Scottish guy who's got Velcro fastening on his trainers and he's got a Forbidden Planet bag where he's been shopping to get sci-fi stuff.
Right, yeah.
And Ewan McGregor just mocks him for lacking in presence, charisma, style and charm, and then they throw him out of the house, barely suppressing laughter. They humiliate him, and you see through the rest of the montage, through the questions that you're talking about, that all of this is just a game to them.
Yeah.
They are just these cynical, bored sociopaths who entertain themselves at everybody else's expense. And I think it's quite pointed that they are living at the top of this townhouse. So they really are looking down on everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have a single redeeming quality, do they?
No, yeah. I mean, that's what I kind of liked about this movie. Like, they aren't the good guys, really.
No.
And they're not even struggling. They've got good jobs. They're not at shit jobs. You know, Alex is a journalist, Juliet's a doctor, and David's a chartered accountant. Like, these are well-paid jobs. They live in a really nice flat. Like, it's
Yes.
massive.
Yes.
Like, there's more space than furniture in rooms, and that just never happens normally.
I know. You're able to do shots of two people confronting each other where you can see them from head to toe, which normally, when you're filming in an indoor space, is impossible. But this set was purpose-built, and that's where most of their money went. It was built in a big warehouse in Glasgow.
Right.
Yeah, it was enormous. I mean, they walked into it and just thought, this is ridiculous, but it enables them to give the film much more visual variety.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
they are. They're very well-off people. And yeah, not very nice people at all.
Yeah, not very nice. I mean, even Alex, so played by Ewan McGregor, he is a real asshole.
Yeah.
A real asshole for the majority of the film.
I couldn't be in a room with him for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Like, they go to some fundraiser and he's mocking the kids. It's like, this is a fundraiser for kids. I hate kids.
Yeah. I'd give you money to put them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's awful. When they discover the dead body,
Yeah.
Alex's first instinct is to rifle through all of his things. Nobody seems to care that somebody has died
No.
in their flat.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing normal people would do would be calling the police, not touching anything.
No.
And also, I do feel like they try to portray David, played by Christopher Eccleston, as the good guy, I guess, the sane one. But then he just descends into being like a deranged psychopath by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And Alex is kind of been portrayed as the good guy by the end. But no one's a good person. They all backstab each other.
They do, yeah. So Christopher Eccleston's David goes from being the one that you think is going to be possibly the most sympathetic. He narrates the opening, so you think he is our identification figure who will make it through to the end. Spoilers, he does not. And because of that, I think the fact that he is the one that draws the short straw and has to dismember the body,
Yes.
that experience fundamentally changes him, and he switches from being the mild-mannered chartered accountant who takes a risk because he's worried about being boring. There's that wonderful scene where he's in his office, his place of work, and he is surveying this room full of mild-mannered, slightly balding guys in sweater vests.
Yes.
And just horrified at his potential future. And the camera pans back, and all of a sudden, Juliette is there.
Yeah.
And he just says, let's do it. And I don't even know if she's really there, if it's just in his mind's eye. But there is this very definite visual choice that he is making. So he takes this risk to do something exciting. And it fundamentally changes him and turns him into a paranoid killing machine. I mean, he goes from being quite timid to offing guys that break into their home to get the money back and throwing them down the hatch in the loft. And yeah, he's terrifying at the end of it.
Yeah. I mean, despite the fact that these characters are unlikable and, as you say, repellent, I really found them interesting, really fascinating to watch, and sort of dynamics between them. And it felt like they were real flatmates. Like, I was convinced that these people did live with each other. They felt so comfortable with each other and not stereotyped characters that you would normally see in movies. Like, it wasn't the nerd and the prude or anything like that. They were all, just normal people, but interesting.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to Danny Boyle's history in the theatre and his approach of making sure that the actors are very comfortable with each other before they start filming and go through a very rigorous rehearsal process. So for this, he got the cast and himself in a 4-bedroom flat for some time before they started filming, and went over the script together and rehearsed all day for sort of a few weeks, so that they had lived together, had done the washing up together and all that kind of thing, and were comfortable around each other, and had worked on their characters and had worked on the scenes and the dialogue together. And that's something that he's stuck with ever since. So on Sunshine, I learned that he did the same thing with the crew of the Icarus. He got them to live in a shared space. In that case, it was a university dormitory to fit them all in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I mean, I think it works.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, with the set of the flat, each room seems to have a colour palette.
It does, yeah.
Is there any significance to the colours?
I didn't detect any specific pattern in how they were used. I just noticed that they were given their own visual identity, so that you definitely, first of all, had a lot of variety, even though you were in interiors for the majority of the film. And secondly, you could clearly tell where you were from one room to the next.
I mean, that's one thing that did stand out. Like, it felt, you knew you were in the kitchen because it was a certain color. Like, I think they were all muted colors, but there was like a green room and I think a blue room, and the front door was red, bright red. Again, like what you said with the color red.
Yeah.
And so it did feel like you knew where you were in this flat at all times. And also when David moves upstairs into the attic and starts sleeping in the attic, you've got another space that you're kind of aware of.
Yeah, and that one very much a visualization of what's going on in his mind, because it's this web of paranoia, because it's lit by beams of light created by the holes he's drilled in the ceiling, so he can wander around and keep an eye on what everybody in the flat is doing.
Yeah.
Because he's terrified of his flatmates now.
Yeah, I found a lot of similarities, especially with his character and the voyeurism of him spying on everyone else from above. It felt similar to Psycho. Like, so there were sort of moments in this movie that were quite Hitchcockian. Like, it was, a thriller with some sort of moral dilemma, and someone just kind of losing it with paranoia, and it was very similar to sort of Norman Bates.
Yeah, and I think the tone, which is so blackly humorous, is definitely something that Hitchcock would have appreciated. And it's very difficult to escape the legacy of Hitchcock when you're in this sort of territory. And there are a number of shots that I thought were very Hitchcockian. So I love that scene where Juliette is on the phone. She's dialed 999 and the camera is slowly pushing in on her. And then you realize that it's representing Alex, who enters frame left holding this open suitcase of cash, and she just turns around and looks down and then immediately hangs up.
Yeah.
And visually, I did find it quite reminiscent of Hitchcock in several places.
Yeah.
But spiced up with a lot of modern energy.
Yes. Another film that this reminded me of is the 1944 movie directed by Fritz Lang, The Woman in the Window, in which they accidentally kill a person in self-defense, but then they decide to bury the body, and then again, paranoia, and there's no money involved in this movie, but it's very similar vein.
Yeah.
Essentially innocent people covering up a crime.
But instead of being people who are so racked with guilt or so unaccustomed to doing anything like this that they make various mistakes and it trips them up and leads to their downfall, I don't think they really make any mistakes except their sort of naivety about how easy it will be for the police to figure out what they've done and for Hugo's criminal associates to track them down, although I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how they find the car in the quarry.
Yeah, I kind of like that though. I felt like this movie didn't try to explain everything. It just showed it. And as a viewer, you just kind of accepted it.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how the two like murderous guys even found the flat. Like, I don't know how they found, the car in the quarry either. There's no explanation, but you just kind of accept it. It's like they figured it out somehow. And they're there, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's not really about that. It's just sort of the inevitability of it.
Yeah.
But again, it's not because the flatmates have done anything wrong or stupid or made a mistake or left a clue anywhere. They executed it all perfectly based on Alex's inside knowledge of these sorts of crimes from his job. So it's not really that kind of moral downfall story.
You're totally right. They don't slip up at any point. Like, even when they're being interrogated by the police, they don't say anything to give themselves away. And they're very smart about it. I mean, knowing to cut off hands so that there's no fingerprints and to smash out the teeth of the victim so there's no dental records. And then giving all those body parts to Juliet, who's a doctor.
Yeah.
And she disposes of the body parts using the incinerator at the hospital.
Yeah.
That's like really smart. Like, no one keeps mementos at all. Like, there's nothing linking them to any of the bodies, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, which makes me think that the film really isn't about the crime or the crime thriller aspect of it. I think it is much more about the dynamics between these three people.
Yeah, and them not trusting each other. If they had trusted each other, they would have gotten away with it, but they didn't. They had this, like, especially with David, with the paranoia, and then at the end, everyone double crossing everyone.
Yeah.
We should talk about the ending. It's a nice twist ending, and it's like, oh, hooray! Like, that's nice.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Spoilers here. I have no idea how Alex got the money from the tank in the attic. By the way, why is there a water tank in the attic? What is that?
Oh, it's a standard feature of British homes, or at least it was for a certain period.
Really?
Yeah, it's not now. I haven't got a water tank in my loft.
Yeah.
Because my home was built about 7 years ago.
Yeah,
So
okay.
But yeah, for an old property like this, the easiest way to get water down into the house would be to start at the top and let it fall down.
Wow.
Gravity do its work.
Interesting. Oh, okay. I had no idea. Anyway, back to it. I don't know how Alex got the money from the suitcase that was in the tank down from the attic without David knowing, and then putting it into the floorboards.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I mean, it was up there for quite a while before David took up residence in the loft. So presumably he did have an opportunity to do it at some point. And you do see him with a whole stack of his newspapers at one point deciding to cut them into banknote-sized newspaper clippings so that he can put the fake version of the banknotes in there.
Yeah, so the big twist, those of you that don't know, and big spoilers obviously, there's a big fight at the end between the three of them. David gets killed.
Yeah.
And you've got Alex knifed to the floorboards.
Yeah.
That Juliet has hammered in further, so he can't move. And so she takes the suitcase and she's got a plane ticket to Rio or something. And then she finds out that the suitcase is just full of newspaper. And then you cut back to Alex on the floor and he's smiling, and then it pans down and all the money's in the floorboards.
It is, yeah.
It is a great twist, but I just don't know when he did it. I'm pretty sure David was on guard with the money at all times.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would have thought so too, but you do clearly see hints of it. So you do see the moment when he starts to cut up the paper, Alex.
Yeah.
And also he has that nightmare where he's trapped in the floorboards, which is clearly a reference to what he's done.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. It felt quite similar to the end of Trainspotting as well, because isn't there money being
Right.
stashed in a locker or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a common feature of Danny Boyle's movies, oddly enough.
Right.
It's fascinating watching the three of them implode. I mean, they're a curious bunch of people because apart from being sort of cruel, arrogant people who look down on everyone, and I'm not even sure whether they like each other or not. I just think that they're a good match for each other in a flat sharing situation.
Yeah.
There's a strange sexual tension between both of the men and Juliet. There's a scene where, in order to get Ewan McGregor's character Alex to hand over her mail, Juliet exposes her breasts to him by walking out of the bathroom, just completely brazen, and just takes it off him and walks back in. There's a scene where she throws him to the floor when they're doing some sort of Scottish Highland dancing, and she puts her foot in his mouth.
Yeah.
I think. And then he kisses her ankle.
Yes.
So there's this sort of domineering humiliation thing that they've got going on. It's a really weird sexual dynamic. And then towards the end of the movie, she sleeps with David, purely, I think, because he's a threat and she wants to get him on side.
Yeah.
Kerry Fox, interestingly, in the making of, she's seen on set getting made up, ready to start shooting, and they ask her how she's feeling, and she says, I don't know, I keep saying to Danny, she's underwritten, and he says she's mysterious. So I think probably Juliet is the biggest flaw in terms of the writing. She clearly is all things to all men and manipulative, doing whatever she needs to in any given circumstance. It's not a very well fleshed out character arc compared to the other two.
I don't know. I liked her character. I thought it was complex.
Oh, yeah.
She was in control. She wasn't a damsel or anything. She wasn't a victim.
No.
Like, I felt like she knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, she does. And she definitely has a plan at the end. Like, she sleeps with David just to make sure that he thinks that she's safe territory, but she's also bought a ticket. But he knows that. He finds out about the ticket that she's booked and she's only got one seat. She hits somebody with a toaster. David punches Juliet in the face, which I think is the final downfall in terms of audience sympathy for that character. At the point when you think that she is going to side with Alex because the threat, the person who's gone off the rails has been disposed of, she uses her shoe to hammer the knife into the floor, or even harder, to pin him into position so she can get away with the money.
Yeah.
Which is, echoing the earlier scene where she puts her foot in his mouth. And I thought that was particularly cruel because it comes right after Alex tries to cover for her by saying that it was his idea to buy the plane tickets when it wasn't. But she doesn't even show any gratitude for that. She just nails him to the floor and tries to take the money and run.
Yeah.
So just, awful, awful people. So the question is this a compelling and engaging movie when the three main characters are all awful?
Yeah. But they're still likable, though.
Do you think so?
I found them really charismatic in a very awful way. Like, they're funny.
Yeah.
I found the dialogue incredibly funny, incredibly witty and quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a lot of British films this year on the podcast, I have to say.
We have.
And again, very quick dialogue similar to Dog Soldiers and even like Jabberwocky and Eric the Viking. Like, it's funny dialogue. It's dry and sarcastic and and cruel, really cruel lines as well. But they kind of get what's coming to them. That's satisfying for me.
Yeah, I suppose so. That is true.
You know, like Alex is absolutely atrocious to Cameron, and then they bump into him at the party, and then he gets like beaten up by Cameron and his friends. It's great. It's like, yes, that's exactly what you deserve.
No, I suppose so. I just think that the flippant glee that they have, it does keep the movie bouncing along so it doesn't become so mired in its own darkly satirical and cynical tone that you just reject it. It does make it fun.
Yeah, it does.
But I couldn't sit there and have a dinner party with them, especially Alex. The guy won't shut up.
Yeah.
He's shouting the whole time.
Oh, no, exactly. I mean, I definitely couldn't meet these people in real life, but on screen, they're very compelling.
Now, I see this in criticisms of, for example, Saltburn, a movie that I absolutely loved that came out towards the end of last year, which is a darkly satirical sort of talented Mr. Ripley tale set against the British upper classes, the sort of landed gentry. And reviewers there were saying, you know, how can anybody enjoy this? Because everybody on screen is utterly, utterly horrible.
Yeah.
I do find it enjoyable, but I think that's because the central character is quite sympathetic.
Right, yeah. I don't know. There are movies where you have horrible people, but it's fascinating. Like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Horrible characters. Just drug-addled, rude, obnoxious people. But it's you're just watching this train wreck unfold, and it's amazing.
No, that's true.
And it's the same thing with this movie.
Now it's time for random trivia.
Trivia time. Conrad, I believe you have something fascinating to share about Danny Boyle and the money used in the film.
He tells a really fun story on the commentary track about the £1 million in the suitcase, which is that they rented it for a day.
Oh.
That suitcase of £1 million.
Like real money.
It's really a suitcase of £1 million, and it cost them £1,000 to rent it for the day. It came with its own security guard from the bank, and all the shots that feature it, it is really a suitcase of £1 million that you're seeing on the screen. Yeah.
I don't. Is that the most cost-effective way of doing it? Couldn't they just, I don't know, photocopy some money and just
fake the money?
Yeah, because you don't see them rifling through the money. Like you just see the tops of the bundles.
Yeah, exactly. You would have thought they could have just like hired, you know, it's just got the top layer and just faked the rest.
Yeah.
But no, they hired a suitcase of £1 million for a day so that they could rifle through it. And he said it had a tangible effect on the cast. Like the fact that they were actually staring at a suitcase of £1 million, which back in 1994 was a lot of money. Now you barely get rent with it. But
I mean, it's still a lot of money. Come on.
It is, but I mean, it might buy you a house in a cheap area in the UK, maybe.
Right. It's funny that to hire £1 million it cost £1,000.
Yeah,
it's quite strange.
Yeah. Mainly because of the staff, I guess. It's mainly because you got to pay for the guy that's going to stand over it all day.
Okay.
But yeah, they really had a suitcase with £1 million in it, which was the movie's budget. The movie's budget was £1 million.
Yeah. Wow.
So they were staring at their budget basically in the middle of the floor.
Oh my god. Oh, that's great.
It's really weird, isn't it?
It's quite strange.
And that's our trivia.
Yes. The music, it was good. I mean, there's a lot of needle dropping, which I really loved, by the way. There's use of a Nina Simone song, My Baby Just Cares For Me, which is used after they discover Hugo's dead body, and it just kind of pans around the room and then it finally lands on the suitcase of money. And it's just great, really happy-go-lucky music in this quite disturbing scene. It's a nice sort of contrast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a montage of all three of them going about their daily lives. Like you see them at work, each of them one after the other.
That's right.
And you just get this sense that all they care about is the money. There's this dead body in their flat and they don't care about anything apart from this suitcase of cash.
Yeah.
My baby just cares for me. So it's twisted. It's a really great needle
Yeah,
drop.
and also at the end as well with a song by Andy Williams, "Happy Heart," with the big twist and Juliet realizing that there's no money in the suitcase and Alex on the floor with the blood spilling out from behind him, and then it pans down to the cash under the floorboards. It's just like such a great moment and such a great use of that piece of music.
It is, yeah. A lot of people get confused and think that Alex is dead at the end of the movie.
But he talks to them. So it cuts forward and you've got like the police investigating the room and taking photos of him. And like he talks to them, right?
He
like,
does, but nobody talks to him.
Right.
Yeah, there was some audience members, a lot of people, I remember at the time and even now, think that he's dead, but they're taking pictures of the body rather than, medical people surrounding him and trying to sort him out.
Yeah. I mean, it does not really make a lot of sense that they're not taking the knife out and addressing the wounds that he's got in his chest. It does seem strange that they're just taking photos of him while he's like bleeding out on the floor.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do get that people would mistake him for being dead.
Yeah. The music by Simon Boswell, who is the score composer.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a huge amount of time because there are so many needle drops. Very much a theme in 90s. There was kind of in the late 90s and early aughts, I think there was a move away from the orchestral romanticism that had suddenly taken hold in the 80s towards modern music and needle dropping and making great soundtrack albums.
I mean,
in fact, I remember you did a really good panel for Iconicon where you were talking about 90s soundtrack albums that I really enjoyed.
Trainspotting is an incredible soundtrack. So
it's monumental. So Simon Boswell doesn't have as much to do on this, and obviously he did not have much money because it's 90s digital sampling synths attempting sound like acoustic instruments. There's one particular cue where they're driving towards the place where they're going to bury the body, and it's got all these sort of staccato sampled strings and this piano figure stomping around, and it's very dramatic and baroque, and I just think, I don't like that very much. But the sort of cyclical piano figure over the moody synths that they use for most of it isn't too bad for their unspooling madness. I thought that worked okay.
Yeah. It felt a bit TV movie to me. Like it didn't quite have the impact of cinematic scoring.
No.
It felt small, but it worked. I thought it did work. It was subdued scoring and it fit the mood of the movie, which I didn't mind the score.
No, it never pulled me out of the movie except for that one moment where I thought, tone that down. But other than that, it was fine.
Yeah.
But I think really when people think of the soundtrack to this movie, they're going to think of Nina Simone, Andy Williams, and Left Field.
Yeah. I mean, the title track and also the track in the credits, I think they're both Left Field. It's rave music. It's party music. It fits. It's the 90s. You got to have it.
And hadn't really been used in a mainstream film prior to that.
Right. Okay.
Or a film that got a theatrical release. So it felt very new. It felt very now. I think that was the sort of experience for a lot of people going to theatres and seeing it. It was like, wow, this is something new.
Yeah.
Sort of like when Staying Alive hit theatres and people saw disco on the screen for the first time. It was a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, it reflected the franticness of the first scene, interviewing the people, and just the dialogue and the quick cutting and stuff. It was manic.
It is, yeah. The film has quite an energy to it. It sets itself up as being something that's going to be vibrant and young, but then it sort of settles into the establishing the mood and the suspense and so on. So it becomes less edgy in that sense, stylistically.
Yeah. It does remind me a little bit of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, because that does have the same sort of franticness.
Yeah.
It's almost too much in that movie. I mean, I love that movie. I still love it. But it's maybe half of the movie is this like really frantic, manic editing style that I feel like it worked at the time, but when you watch it now, it's like, oh, just let me just watch the scene.
Calm down.
It's just so much cutting. Yeah.
It's very 90s, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mbly Awards.
Ah, yes, it's that special time of the podcast, the Mbly Awards, where we nominate our favourite knife-twisting parts of the film in an array of deranged flatmate spying categories.
Best quote.
Oh, there are so many to choose from
Yeah.
because the dialogue is so great in this movie.
Good.
But the one I finally plumped for is the one that I giggled at a lot, was from David Christopher Eccleston's character, and he says, "Normally I don't meet people unless I already know them."
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know. Makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. Although it does now, because now, of course, we have parasocial relationships online where people don't
Well, yeah, that's true.
meet each other in person at all.
Yeah.
But, yeah. What was yours?
Yeah, I decided to pick a not so funny quote because I'm going to keep all of those for the funny moment category. But this is when Alex and David are preparing Hugo's body for sort of transportation, and you don't hear it, but I think it's implied that David asks Alex about, like, how about Hugo's family and friends, and in which Alex replies, "Family, friends, drugged up, wandering, suicidal, search of the self fuck-ups don't have family, David." It's great.
Best hair or costume.
Gotta say, I did love one of Ewan McGregor's costumes. It's during the party scene, the fundraiser, and he's got a green tartan suit jacket. And it's so Scottish. It's just so
It
good.
is. Yeah, that's your one splash of local colour, isn't it? That charity ball where they're all doing the Highland dancing
Yeah.
of some description, and there's
Everyone's in
lots
kilts.
of kilts.
Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
seen so much tartan in one room before.
Oh yeah, it's quite eye gouging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that sort of thing really happens, but I guess it does.
Maybe in the 90s. I don't know.
Maybe in the 90s. Yeah, my choice is Ewan McGregor again, and it's, I don't know, just one item of clothing that I think is iconic, and it's his chunky white gym socks that he
Oh.
wears at various points throughout the movie, but from that very first shot where the camera's at a low angle to make the flatmates look so imposing during the interviewing scene, literally looking down on their subject, and he's got his legs crossed and he's wearing these big chunky white gym socks that are all sort of like wrinkled up around his ankles. And I don't know, it's iconic. That I personally think they should get fourth billing in the movie.
Yeah,
Those
right.
socks. They're great.
Most 90s moment.
Well, this film couldn't be more 90s if it
Yeah,
tried, but
I know.
I try to pick on something that's particularly spoke to me, and for me, it was the production design of the flat and a little detail that I thought was just spot on, at least from my experience at the time of being a student, and it's feature properties that have got these beautiful original wood features that have just been drowned in thick coats of vibrantly coloured
Yeah.
paint,
Yep.
thus destroying their original value, and it's always so badly done and so thick, and the paint's like dried and created a whole new surface, and added like a centimetre of thickness to the object itself. And it was every student flat that I was in was like that.
Yeah. It is a very 90s film. I mean, from the dance ravey music and the soundtrack, you've got like technology, disposable cameras being, very...
Oh yeah.
Every flat had a disposable camera that you would just pass around, and you'd eventually develop the film, and every photo was badly lit and blurry. It's such a waste of money buying disposable cameras. And another 90s piece of technology is the tiny TV that they have, which also has a VCR built into the TV that you could play VHS tapes.
Yes, I remember those.
Favorite scene?
I didn't have a favourite scene in the movie, but I had a lot of favourite shots. And I think probably the image of the loft crisscrossed with webs of light is probably the one that I like the most.
Stunning.
Because it's sort of like Entrapment, but without Catherine Zeta-Jones in a catsuit. I thought it was really visually stunning, but also a great way of sort of visually evoking what was going on in his mind as well.
Yeah. No, it was lit amazingly.
Yeah.
Got these huge sort of rays of light sort of crisscrossing in the attic. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was very clever. They had to do it all slow motion in order to get the light beams to really show up. So it's
Really?
lots of long exposures. Yeah. So the light beams don't show up as well when characters are moving around in the loft because they're having to do it at normal speed.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Most cliche moment.
The biggest cliche I thought in this movie was the suitcase full of money.
Yeah. A buttload of cash in a thriller. Always complicates things, doesn't it?
It always does. I mean, sometimes you don't even know what it is, like in Pulp Fiction, where they just keep opening this suitcase and this sort of gold glow comes over them. And you don't know what's in there. But yeah, suddenly discovering a suitcase full of money, and it never ends well.
No.
Never ends well, a suitcase of money.
Biggest cliche for me, it's obvious. It's the jump scare pigeon in the attic.
Yeah, you got to have a jump scare pigeon.
If it's not a cat or a bat, it's a pigeon. So there it is.
Yeah.
Best special effect?
There aren't that many special effects. There are things that happen off camera that you don't see. But I guess the obvious one would be David's death. So a knife through the throat from behind by Juliet. Very akin to Kevin Bacon's demise in Friday the 13th with the arrow.
Yes.
But quite shocking. Like, I didn't expect it.
No, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so effective, because, it's a fairly obvious prosthetic gag with a flip-up knife tip or whatever it is, and the blood spurting out.
Is that how they did it?
Yeah, you see it in the behind the scenes. But I think it's the misdirection and the surprise that sell it, because you think you're just about to cut to, because David is just about to stab Alex again.
Yeah.
He's already done one shoulder, so you're waiting for shoulder number 2 for a full, crucifixion on the floorboards. But instead of that, all of a sudden this blade through the throat and he falls out of shot, and Juliet is behind him holding a knife.
Yeah.
And you think, it's really shocking.
Yeah.
It's really shocking.
Yeah, it is.
Favorite sound effect.
I suspect we might pick a similar sound effect here.
Yeah, we might.
I think it's the sound of the hacksaw on the bone. Yeah. When David is dismembering Hugo's corpse. It's
grueling.
A horrible, horrible noise.
It's very squeaky almost. Like it just it does the trick, I have to say. You don't have to see what's going on. You just hear it and you fill in the blanks, and it's I don't know. It's quite a shocking scene. I was very disturbed by that, and then it's followed by him bashing the teeth out, and you don't see it again. You don't see any of the details, but hearing these squishy impacts with it's horrible.
It is, yeah. And Danny Boyle said that he always made sure, no matter how much they were spending on the budget, that he had enough money for post-production for good sound, because
Makes a difference.
He says sound is, it's like 75% of your movie. There's so much of a focus on the visual, but it's 75% of the impact comes from the sound. And a lot of people found Shallow Grave really quite disgusting.
Yeah.
It was considered to be a very confronting film at the time.
It is.
Most funniest moment?
There's a very kind of throwaway line that I really found hilarious. So this is after they've found Hugo's dead body, and they've gone about their day, and David has returned from work, and he walks in and he asks Alex and Juliet, he's still here? like referring to Hugo's body, in which Alex replies, yeah, he couldn't get his car started. It's just like...
I know.
Amazing.
And Juliet says, I'm getting used to having him around. Yeah, they're so callous.
Yeah.
They're just uncaring.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
My favourite is a little throwaway detail as well. It's after the scene where the thugs have broken into their flat and attacked them all, and Ewan McGregor's Alex memorably gets a crowbar to the shins.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most eye-watering scenes, mainly because of Ewan McGregor's performance of how much pain he's in, which is heartbreaking. It's just awful. Later in the movie, when he goes out to the scene of the crime where all the bodies are, because he's been assigned the task as a journalist of covering this discovery in the woods of these bodies, he's trying to get out of his car, and when he reaches back in to get something from the passenger seat, the door closes on his shins. And I just roared with laughter because I could feel that. It's like,
Yeah.
And that's our Mbly's?
Yes, that's our Mbly.
Hi, I'm Chris McKay. I'm the director of Renfield, and you're listening to movie Oubliette.
Yes, it's final verdict time. Should Danny Boyle's Shallow Grave from 1994 be set free with a suitcase of cash and jet set around the globe and be celebrated by all, or should it be bashed in the shins with a crowbar, drowned in the bathtub, and then dropped unceremoniously, without teeth or hands, back into the dark oubliette, lost forever? Conrad.
Gosh.
Does Shallow
That might be
Grave...
the worst fate we've ever described for one of our movies.
I know. Does Shallow Grave hold up? Is it still a good movie?
It's a tricky one for me, this one, because I hate all of the characters. And as a result, I find it really difficult to remain engaged in the movie or to care about the outcome. And it's odd for me because usually I love movies full of reprehensible people. So Talented Mr. Ripley and Saltburn, where there's some evil person who's exacting terrible fates on shallow people. I love it. I love all of it. But for this one, I actually find it really difficult to get engaged in it. But having said that, it is a very important moment in British cinema. It's a very well-crafted movie. It's a fantastic screenplay by John Hodge with some cracking dialogue on it. And it's a stunning trio of performances from the three leads. You know, it's the beginning of lots of really great careers and a whole new movement in British cinema. So it's kind of difficult to say, no, hurl it back, because I do think if you haven't seen it, and I know a lot of people haven't, it's a really good psychological thriller if, unlike me, you can get past the fact that all of the characters in it are just reprehensible scumbags. But perhaps you find it interesting to sort of watch what happens to them despite that. So yeah, I'm on the fence about it, but I think it's too good a movie to just hurl back. So I think I will have to let it go, even though I personally would not own a copy or revisit it ever.
Right. I think this movie is very rewatchable. I mean, yes, reprehensible characters, but I'm enthralled by them. I think it's the witty dialogue. I love the dialogue in this movie. It does set it apart from your normal 90s thrillers. Like it's not like American thrillers where it's very moody and, I don't know, dark and mysterious. This is quite funny throughout the movie, even though incredibly disturbing things are happening. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie. And early Ewan McGregor, early Christopher Eccleston and Kerry Fox. Danny Boyle's one of my favorite directors. So love I love seeing where he started. Like, this is obviously, a warm-up towards Trainspotting, which feels like it's sort of older brother. So it's, I don't know. I really enjoyed this film, and I would definitely recommend it. I think also the flatmate situation, I've lived through that. I mean, not with dead bodies and buttloads of cash, but I've lived through, living with challenging people. It kind of resonates with my 20s. So
Right.
it's something I can definitely relate to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all of my housemates, when I was at university, they were all fine. So,
Yeah, I mean, I had
I was
some good
lucky.
ones, and I had some, other ones. So
hopefully not anybody as arrogant and callous as these three
no.
are. Yeah. No, you're right. They are fascinating to watch. And I think the humor is an important part of it too. I think one of the shortcuts in a movie to making people like a character is to either get them to rescue a cat or make them funny.
Yeah.
Or be nice to children.
Yes.
So if they're funny, you
Yes.
can get a long way with the character.
I think if they weren't funny, I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed this movie. The humor is what got me, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we better find out what our patrons think. Hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad.
Can we have the patrons vote, please?
You'll never guess. They want to set it free.
Ooh, okay, yes. So they agreed with us. Well, me. I mean, and
Mostly you.
kind of.
Mostly you, although I'm pleased that Jasmine is here, as always, fiercely waving the flag for a controversial viewpoint.
Yes,
People
yes.
generally are supposed to love the music and films that most represent the decade that they attended high school and university, but I do not. I hate this movie. It has so many depressing 90s traits I cannot stand, immoral main characters whom I don't give a damn for, illogical and stupid decisions by characters we're told should be intelligent, ugly, bleak styles and visuals that make me gag, and a smarmy attitude that seems to revel in the degradation of humanity. When I compare it to Sam Raimi's excellent A Simple Plan, I can't understand how anyone would prefer to watch Shallow Grave. If I wanted to get depressed that badly, I would listen to the dreck music that dominated the radio waves at the time this film came out. Yet I sighed when I heard this film announced for the next episode because I knew that I would again be the film's sole detractor. And that depresses me even more than would again sitting through this filthy film. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen A Simple Plan or Blood Simple for that matter. But I should watch those two movies.
You definitely should, yes. Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan is a really good example of him being sort of a mature filmmaker doing a solid character piece. It's a really good movie.
Okay, yeah,
really
right.
good. Yeah. Eddie Coulter, on the other hand, said, "Unearth the grave and let it loose. I discovered this thanks to the 2012 Criterion release. I like Trainspotting, but I enjoyed Shallow Grave more with its twists and turns. If you like Hitchcock, you need to give this film a try."
Yeah.
Isaac says, God, this movie is so 90s. Cynical, sarcastic, and smug. It laughs at your morality with a green grunge aesthetic and a driving electronic sound. Like watching a slow-motion car crash, it made me feel dirty for deriving any sense of joy or beauty from it. But if you're paying attention, those things are somehow present in all the horrific carnage. It's really solid. 100% should be released. So yeah, Isaac also completely repulsed, but also says it should be released. So
Yeah, right.
there you go. It's some people really love it, some people just hate it, and some people feel it's awful, but also recognize the greatness of the filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, a real spectrum, but yeah, 80% said let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's let it go.
Off you go, Shallow Grave.
I'm off to Rio.
All right, Conrad, what's up next on the next episode? What's the film?
So for our next episode, we'll be doing a Patron's Choice episode.
Oh, yes. These ones are always unexpected.
They are. So our patrons have been nominating things for the past couple of weeks. We got some great ones on there. Howsu, some dark Disney on there. We've got Black Cauldron, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Yeah, some real gems.
Okay, let's do the spin. Here we go. Spinning.
It's a blur.
What's it going to be?
It's Equilibrium.
Oh.
Interesting.
Christian Bale?
That's right. The 2002 American science fiction film directed by Kurt Wimmer, starring Christian Bale, Emily Watson, and Taye Diggs.
Ah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember watching this in my 20s. It was quite popular among my friends.
Yeah, I have never seen it.
Definitely a response to The Matrix. Like, it was very stylized fight scenes.
Yeah, The Matrix celebrating its 35th anniversary. So that's 99. This is 2002. So yeah, I think there's an influence there.
Yeah. And dystopian future type setting as well. So,
Of course.
yeah. I wonder if this ages well. I haven't seen it since my
wonder.
20s.
So released in December of 2002 with a budget of 20 million and box office of 5. Ouch.
Right. So who chose this one?
This one was chosen by Film Aficionado.
Oh, okay. Congratulations on the choice.
Yeah, and we haven't done one from Film Aficionado before, so congrats.
Yes. All right, listeners, if you haven't already, you can follow us on all platforms and on social media as Movie Oubliette, and you can also email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you'd like to support the show, head on over to Patreon, where for $1 you can nominate films for future episodes, like Film Aficionado did this week. And for $5 you get access to our exclusive minisodes, where this month we watched the original Godzilla movie. And
We did,
talked
yes.
about that.
Yes.
It's fun. And for $10, you can be an executive producer like Chazilla, Eddie Coulter, Isaac Sutton, Dr. Doggy, Serge, Iconographer, and Ryan A. Potter.
Yes. We have merchandise on Redbubble and a YouTube channel as well, which we should probably update at some point. And if you haven't already, please give us a rating and review on whatever platform you are listening to us on. It does, help us out just a little bit.
It does, yeah. Gets our name out there.
Yes. Well, until next time, Conrad, that's it for this episode. Goodbye.
Bye for now.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
It's not a story, Alex. It's a corpse.